What is going on, everybody? It's Matt Marchese, also known as Islanders Daily, your daily news for the four-time Stanley Cup champions, New York Islanders. And yes, today we have some more kind of updates around David Riddick, and we learned why Patrick Waugh decided to go to the Riddick route. I know we talked a little bit about it, or a lot about it yesterday. We're going to kind of talk a little bit more about it today. And Patrick Waugh said the decision to keep Riddick over Hogberg was based on NHL experience. So that's the reason they went with Riddick, is because he's just more experienced in the NHL level. Now, I don't know how I feel about this response because it almost seems like Hogberg never really had an opportunity to make the role or the team as the backup goaltender just because he didn't have as much NHL experience. I really do think it should be whoever's playing the best should be on the team. Now, obviously, I don't think Hogberg is, that great of a goaltender to be on the team per se, but still, it's a little interesting that this was the reason why it said it wasn't, we just liked what we saw in training camp or we liked what we saw, in the preseason games. It's more so just because he has more NHL experience, which is, a little nerve-wracking, I guess. I wouldn't be too surprised if in, the middle part of the year, Riddick is really struggling. If we see, Hogberg get called up and get a chance, or even someone like Tristan Lennox or something like that. But from what I've seen of Lennox, he unfortunately hasn't looked too good, which is a shame. So I really do think it's either going to be Riddick or Hogberg. So, yeah, that's the reason Patrick Waugh decides to say that David Riddick will make the team. It's, like I said, a little nerve-wracking for that reason. Obviously, Sorokin will be the starter of going forward and should be, start a whole year. But I know Islander fans don't want Sorokin to be put in that position where he's stuck playing 60 to 65 games again, and it's going all on him. So we need Riddick to lock in. We need Riddick to play a solid backup season of NHL hockey, at least just like a 900, save percentage, 900 to 903. I'd be okay with David Riddick. 20 games, give me 13 wins or something. We just need an average, decent goaltender performance for David Riddick as a backup goaltender because, like I said, I do think Ilya Sorokin, when he's on his game, is probably one of the best goaltenders in the world. So we need an average, solid David Riddick to be our backup goaltender, and it could be a successful year. Following up, I want to talk a little bit about the comments I've been getting from, and this guy's in my comment section a lot, and he's always giving his pieces, and they're always fun to read, and usually I respond, but this one I really wanted to talk about in this video today because he says about, the older players on the team, and obviously I also share the opinion that the Islanders do need to go forward with a youth movement. But I just need to respond to this one because he says, they may as well put Burke Hood in there, let him take his licks, and next year he will be better for it. We are not making the playoffs with this lack of offense. Should just give the kids a chance. It's their turn to shine. Berg, Ritchie, Jeffries, Larson, Beckman, Maggio all should be playing instead of these old-timers. And I just can't, agree with this. I just can't. If the Islanders were to put all those guys on the lineup and get rid of their old players, they would probably be one of the worst teams in NHL history. And you definitely don't want to go forward with that. Burke Hood is a goaltender who I think is from the Brandon Wheat Kings. I forget exactly what team in the WHL he is from, but he's new to the Islanders, and he really struggled in training camp. Didn't even get a chance to play in a preseason game due to him not being able to adapt to the NHL shooters. So him playing in the NHL this season would have been one of the biggest nightmares ever, especially because goalies take longer to develop. Goalies are the hardest position to develop in hockey, and usually you don't see these good ones really kicking their stride until they're 24, 25 years old. So putting Burke Hood in there, I think instead of letting him getting his licks in and he would be better for it, I think that would make Burke Hood way worse than not. And yeah, so just can't go forward with that. And then, I do think, Callum Ritchie 100% should be on the team. I wouldn't even be afraid to give Alex Jeffries some opportunity on the team and a little later in the season. But somebody like Berg, Larson, Beckman, and Maggio, they're just not at a level to compete in the NHL right now. I think probably the one who has the most potential out of those guys is probably Adam Beckman because he could slot into that fourth line. But if you get rid of those, if you bring in all those guys, you lose all your competitive players for the team. So it just doesn't make sense. I do think that some of the older players need to go, such as Casey Cizikas. I know I've said him a lot. I don't hate Casey Cizikas. But I do think Casey Cizikas' time is winding down on the Islanders. But yeah, I just wanted to respond to that one because it's always fun going back and forth with him with our opposing opinions, I guess, per se, for the team. Obviously, it seems we always have different opinions on the Islanders, and it's really fun. And yeah, so obviously the Islanders can't do that, or they would probably be the worst team in the NHL. But hey, if you want Gavin McKenna, which I know I sure do, I mean that might be the way to go. But no. And then also the Islanders, Patrick Watt says could keep 8 D-men, which is something him and Darsh will discuss. This came after being asked about Isaiah George, and I would just hate this. I would hate going forward with 8 D-men because Isaiah George, I think, is a solid player. But he's a player who should be playing. He shouldn't be sitting in the press box. And I think him being in the AHL with the Bridgeport Islanders as their number one defenseman would do wonders for him, especially with the new coach, Rocky Thompson. I just think having George sit in the press box for 82 games a year would do nothing but hurt him. The only way Isaiah George should be on this team is if he is playing. The Islanders should not go forward with 8 D-men because if they do that, obviously some of those fourth line extras would go down, such as McLean or Gatcombe and stuff like that. But I just don't like this idea by Patrick Wall wanting to keep 8 D-men. It's certainly nerve-wracking, and I hope that's not the route they go. Hopefully they do send George back to the AHL because I think George needs to be playing those minutes. I want him to play those minutes. I want him to develop, and he doesn't develop sitting in the press box. I think it should just be Boquist there as the 7th D-man, and he's somebody who can slot in easily. And then if an injury occurs, obviously you can bring up Isaiah George, who I think is good enough to play in the NHL as a bottom-pairing defenseman right now. But yeah, do not stunt his development just to carry 8 D-men for no reason. You can bring George up and send him down as the easiest thing in the world. It's not a hard thing. So hopefully that's what they do. Hopefully they decide against this and just go forward with the 7 D-men. And then also the Bridgeport Islanders picked up a win today in their preseason game against the Hartford Wolfpack 6-3. Not a lot to say there. I'm just glad those guys were able to win. It's definitely a sign of good things, hopefully, that they're improving. They scored 6 goals, which seemed like a near impossible occurrence happened late last year. So, yeah, that's good. I saw a comment somebody posted and said they're almost to their win total from last season, which got a chuckle out of me. But, yeah, a good win by the Bridgeport Islanders. Hopefully they're able to keep that up to the regular season, and hopefully we have a competitive AHL team. That would be a really nice thing to have. But, yeah, that's about all I have today. Obviously, leave your guys' comments down below for things you want me to talk about in videos. And as always, let's go Islanders.